Welcome to the Short Term Rental Pros podcast. Today, we are in for a treat. Natalie is a badass in the short term rental space. She is the host of the No Vacancy Podcast, which is one of the biggest and best pods there is if you're into this sort of niche content. But Natalie, thank you so much for coming today. And tell us, how did you get into short term rentals?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy, for having me. And we just finished recording my podcast, having Jeremy on as a guest. So you can go listen to that one too if you just want more of the Jeremy and Natalie show. But my
You want the
background, for those
you
of
want
you
the full day. We'll just rip it all day, 24
back
hours
to
in a
back.
row.
Let's do it. Okay. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Natalie Palmer. And like Jeremy said, I'm the host of No Vacancy, the podcast. I'm also the co founder of Level Up Your Listing Summit, which is a women's short term rental summit every year in March in Scottsdale, Arizona. And my background is that I co host 10 properties. And what's unique about my situation is the 10 I co host are all condos in the same condo complex. And so we really operate them like a boutique motel. Laundry is all centralized. I have one cleaning crew. And that's just been kind of the way that we've scaled up and been able to do things really, really efficiently with just 10 units and only one, a couple key players on our staff, like one contractor, one handyman, and one cleaning crew.
You like that freedom. That's what I say when I think some people like get in the short term rentals. They're like, oh, this wasn't. I bought 5 houses in 5 states, and this isn't as simple as I thought it would be. But when it seems like, yeah, what are the benefits of centralizing these operations in not even one location, but is it one building?
Literally one condo complex. I mean, it's so easy, like, even down to, issues happen from time to time, and if we've ever had a problem where, I don't know, the heating unit blew out in one unit, like, chances are I've got another one of the 10 that's open and we can move guests. Like, even things like that, the same way that a hotel, if there's a problem with one room, they'll move you to another. So, I know the boutique motel space is becoming trendier and trendier for short-term rental hosts. That is definitely a goal of mine. I would love to get into the boutique motel space, but I think until then, following this kind of model from a co-hosting perspective, it's such a good way to get in and sort of practice those centralized operations without having to full on buy a motel and renovate the whole thing. You're just picking up co hosted units. And it's so easy to grow that way too, because I mean, I've never done any marketing. I've never sent a flyer around or anything. We started by owning one of those condos and operating it. And we were just crushing it. And neighbors started to approach and say, hey, I listed my place on Airbnb. It's barely booked, but I see guests coming in and out of yours back to back. Like, what are you doing that I'm not? Could you manage my place? So it's all been organic, word of mouth. Anytime that a new investor buys in that condo complex, I know all the realtors in the area, and they always say, "Oh, are you planning on using this as an investment? Here's Natalie's contact info. You want to call her? She manages all the top Airbnbs in this condo complex." So, yeah, it's just from a perspective of growing and scaling and operating, it's been so easy to do it that way.
That's awesome. Yeah, the scale or having the systems in place is a lot easier. Just when you're scaling in a single location. I was actually with Patrick, Natalie and I met at Patrick's STR Nation conference. We'll give Patrick a little bit of a plug here, but I'm personally a believer that a 25 property management business is like a great place to be in life. Obviously, you want to have good properties and all that stuff, but you can kind of get that quote unquote, freedom that that people talk about so much, but also it's not like constant. I mean, yeah, you deal with stuff, but it's for most part not like constant fire drills or anything like that. There are fire drills when you get up to 50, 100. I think there kind of are those fire drills, or at least the people I'm networked with. I'm friends with a lot of people. I know what their businesses are like. I know what their operations are like, and I know what you don't see on Instagram is like the constant BS that you need to deal with. I did tell Patrick though, I was like, I feel like if you're in one spot, which he has 100 in Joshua Tree, it's like being in 50 if you're across like multiple locations. I don't know. Would you agree with that like characterization that like managing in one place is like twice as easy as scaling in like multiple places?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, the one downside is, like, I do think that there's value in diversifying, right? Big Bear, where I operate, very seasonal market. So I have very, very profitable summers and winters. And then my shoulder seasons, there's like no income coming in, even though I have 10 properties I manage. So I would like to replicate what I've done in a different market with opposite seasonality, maybe like a desert market or something. So that's the one downside. A couple of years ago, they were really pushing some strong regulation in Big Bear, and if that had passed, luckily it didn't, would have wiped out my entire portfolio. So there is definitely a benefit to diversifying, but I don't know. There's so much to be said for just like once you figure out a market and you understand that you've built the relationships with cleaners and stuff. I mean, I can get a pest control person. That's another thing too, is how quickly we can get issues resolved. I don't have any full-time employees. They're all independent contractors. But take our handyman, for example. He will literally be in the middle of fixing someone else's water heater. And if I call him, he drops that to come over because we have 10 units. We give him so much business that he's like, I will answer your call every time and tell this person I'll come back in 2 hours when I'm done dealing with this, which maybe sucks for the other guy, but it's just so helpful to be able to give people that much business. We've been able to negotiate a lot of discounts in town. We're right next to like a paddleboard and a kayak rental shop, and they give really steep discounts to our guests because we do bring them so much business having that many units. Another example, typically for a property of our size, a cleaner in Big Bear would charge, I'd say, like 150. If you found someone for 125 to clean a unit of our size, that would be a steal. And we negotiated, we pay our cleaner 105 per cleaning just because it's so easy for her to come and, go start laundry in one unit, hop over to the next one, start laundry there, load the dishwasher here, loop back around and move things to the dryer and all of that. So there are a lot of benefits that come from your economies of scale.
Absolutely. And I think Big Bear, you'd consider that a rural market, right?
It's kinda similar to your, philosophy of how you like, markets you pick. We're about 2 hours from LA, OC, and San Diego, so drivable from really, really populous counties. It is more rural, but, I mean, there's a huge industry with the ski slopes there, and the lake makes it a good summer destination too.
Got it. But in terms of vendors, you would consider because like the way I think about it is like there's rural markets and there's urban and like
Yeah, in terms of vendors, we are definitely rural. I will say this, I love the people of Big Bear, like, genuinely, it is some of the kindest, like, hardest working people, but I will share a funny story that any other Big Bear host will relate to. For the longest time when we were hiring cleaners, we're now on, like, our 4th or 5th cleaner, like, it's been a struggle, but for the longest time hiring cleaners, it was so weird because I'd have so many cleaners that would say, "Oh, I would love to do your places, but, I just have to figure out how to get a ride over to start the day. Like, I need my cousin to drop me off or my neighbor to come drop me off." And it happened a couple times and I didn't think much of it. And finally, it was like the 5th cleaner, this has happened with contractors too, that are like, "I'd love to be there. I'm super reliable, but I just need somebody to drop me off and give me a ride." And then one time we had our painter over, he was painting the exterior of the building, and I mentioned this and I was like, "Yeah, it seems like no one in Big Bear can drive. Like, what is this about?" And he was like, "Yeah, they all have DUIs." It's like,
oh my
"Oh,
goodness. That
okay, got it."
makes sense.
Again, I adore the people of Big Bear. I genuinely mean that. They're very like, they take so much pride in their hometown, and they're all really good skiers and snowboarders and just love to live there, but, it from a hiring standpoint, there are some stressful moments.
Yeah, but I think you kind of have an operational moat. When you operate in a place that's frankly like so I'm in some more urban markets, like the houses I'm in Florida are outside West Palm. If we have an issue, like let's say, yeah, any electrical, any plumbing, anything. I mean, there's Florida crazy stuff happens all the time. So even any of that, you can get someone over there in like 20 minutes. Or that's might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but probably, same day. If it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, we could probably get someone there, even someone we've like never talked to before. At Heiko, at the lake where I started at, that is not the case. Like when I was starting, you had to like beg people to like come out there, especially at, unopportune times, weekends, holidays. But now that I've got 8 properties there and it's people who I've done business, return business with, I've, referred people to, they'll come, like at this point you have that relationship. So I guess would you see operating in a rural market and having scale there as a moat?
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but that is a really, really good point, and, that's actually been a huge selling point for us to sign clients is I'll tell them, "You can try and do this on your own, but if you come under our management, I have all of these relationships already." I'll tell them what I just told you, that I can negotiate a better cleaning price for you, that if there's an issue with your unit, I will get a handyman or contractor there at the drop of a hat, like, they know us and they like working with us. I've never put it in terms like that it's a moat, but you're right, it is a very good kind of barrier to entry for other people to join because there are people in the condo complex that are just solo managers. I wanna say there's probably our entire condo complex has 50 units, and I would say, like, 25 of them are mostly vacant. It's like second home owners that just don't want anyone there when they're not there. Another probably 10 of them have long-term renters, and then of those remaining ones, it's either I manage or it's a self-managed owner, and I look at the numbers, like, I pull AirDNA data, and those other ones are just not as profitable, like, it's harder they can't a lot of them have to block off nights between every stay because they can't get a cleaner there to do same-day turnovers. There are a lot of logistical issues to hiring vendors in a market like that.
Absolutely. So yeah, I really am a firm believer that if you're able to, and like for me, it's like people are like, oh, well, what if like quote unquote oversaturation, like in rural places, if you're investing, like people like me at this point, like won't come there, or people who are even like buy more than I do, or, launch more properties than I do. Maybe, the small institutions, funds that are out there, they're staying the hell away from places where like there's operational difficulties. Like they're just not going to go there. So I don't feel like I bought a house in like Western NC and it's like, again, same situation, like out there in Bumble crap. Silva, North Carolina is technically the town. But what I want to get into now is, I mean, you're a person with many interests. Obviously, you operate yourself, but you also host. I'm going to first go into the more related to this podcast interest, but I'm curious about the other interests too that I've found out about you. But we're going to go into the first one is conferences. I just hosted a 30-person mastermind seminar this weekend in the office that I'm literally in right now. We hung out here like 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Had 5 different speakers. It was great. Got a little heated. It's very very hot in New York right now. But then we went to the rooftop down the street and we had a nice little sunset happy hour. A lot of fun there. Brought in like a lot of like short-term rental business owners like Host GPO, Mount, Arthur at StayFi. Like they just happen to live in New York for whatever reason. I guess myself with B&B Calc. So, had the community come in as well, really with like the emphasis on network. Like my network becomes your network is kind of, how I like to look at it. But that was 30 people. I think you do like 10 times that, like 300 people.
Yep.
How the
Yep.
hell do you
Yeah.
do it? It was tough.
Okay, back to the economies of scale conversation. In a way, I honestly think doing the 300-person conference is easier than the retreat. There's actually a book called 10x is easier than 2x. I don't know if you've read it, but it touches on this exactly. I co-founded a women's short-term rental conference with Tatiana Taylor Tate. She's based in Vancouver, and we have the Level Up Your Listing Summit every March in Scottsdale, and it's for 300 people. And I will say, like, from a perspective of getting sponsors and stuff, it's so much easier. Even certain speakers, there's so many people that we reach out to speak, and there are so many speakers that will literally tell you, like, "Oh, we won't show up to anything with less than 300 people." Like, they just a lot of these bigger name speakers have standards, and yeah, same with sponsors. It's one thing for let's say like a lender, right? A lender could come to one mastermind of 30 people, and if they get one client from that, they're going to make their investment back from sponsoring it. But somebody like a Price Labs, where it's maybe what $20 a month subscription,
like
like
a, like
they
a B&B
need
Calc.
a B&B Calc. Like,
Yeah.
they need a ton of signups to make those sponsorships worth it. So, in a lot of ways, I do think that the 300-person event is easier. We're also able to kinda negotiate better rates with, like, caterers and bartenders and, I don't know, just different vendors like that because we are bringing so much business. But, yeah, it's definitely a big undertaking. It takes us like 6 months to plan, so not to discount, but yeah, there's a lot of areas where it is easier.
Well, and I mean, funny, I think people, when I talk about conferences, people are, oh, I can't believe they're charging $400 for a ticket. What people don't understand is those who are putting up the conferences are shelving out huge amounts of cash, like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, or even, some in the industry, millions of dollars to make it
Yeah.
happen. And they don't even know they're going to make that money back until like the week of. What's that like, taking that risk on that front?
I wanna share our numbers, but I don't want to without consulting Tatiana first because I don't know how she'd feel about it.
Phone a friend.
Um,
Phone a friend. Let's get her in here.
let's you know what? Here, I'm gonna drop the numbers, and if you have to cut this out, Jeremy, later, then I'll check with
We'll
Tatiana, but
bleep them.
our first year of putting on that conference, we spent no, here, I'll tell you first. We made $204,000, okay? 204,000 from our first conference, super stoked about that. We spent 201,000.
So you netted
We
3.
we profited $3,000, you guys. Woo! Like, okay, it is the margins on conferences are so, so, so thin. I'm happy to report that our second year, we were more profitable than that, and I think it'll only go up from here now that we kinda have, like, a name in the industry and some traction behind our event. But first-time events, I even read a statistic, I think they said that it takes 5 to 7 years for conferences to be profitable. So after we read that, we were like, "Okay, we actually accomplished a lot by not losing money year 1." But it is so expensive to put on, and there are other conferences in the industry too that I know have much smaller budgets than we do. If anybody wants to go and, like, look at our website and, like, check out our gallery, I think you'll see why we spend so much money. It's just levelupyourlistingsummit.com. If you go look at the gallery, you'll see how much money we spend on all of our installs and sponsor booths and stage design. It's very, very branded and immersive and experiential, and a lot of other conferences don't do that, but I think for us, we really we had that discussion that as short-term rental hosts, we didn't see any conference in the industry that reflected the values we have as hosts, with hospitality and design being front and center. So it's just something we really pride ourselves on. And I think that there's a lot of value in these other conferences that just focus more on the networking. I think that that's great at the end of the day. But we just felt like as hosts, we talk so much on stage about how you have to have these great amenities and provide experiences, and we weren't seeing that reflected in the conferences we were attending. So that's just one thing where we're like, whatever it costs to put that vision forward, we're gonna fork out the money for it. It's worth it to us.
Yeah, and your audience, and I love that you've niched in, 'cause I Patrick, STR Nation, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, they're, it's definitely, I'd say it's heavy on fun. Like, it's optimized for fun, which is networking. Like, frankly,
Yeah,
it's the
they have a
funnest. I don't
really
know if
fun yeah, they have a great VIP yacht party that they do, lots of fun networking around that. It's a good time. It's in San Diego. You can't not have fun in San Diego.
exactly. Like, people go out to karaoke after. I go out one night with my jet lagged, and the next night I'm dead. If I speak especially, then like that after I drink a lot of coffee so I can be really attentive, and then I crash right after. But yeah, no, I've seen the social media that people put out from your conference. Like, I think the funniest thing I saw, I remember Bridget and Blue
Yeah,
both went to your conference, and
she was one of
uh,
our speakers, yep.
yeah, and there are guys there. Let's
Yes,
I don't know,
men are welcome, okay?
or
We just
maybe
kind of
not. Yeah,
no, they are. I mean, I think what it was is everybody says, like, "Niche down, niche down, niche down," like, that's what everyone talks about. So, in our first year, we really were like, "What's gonna differentiate us? Let's make it a women's focused event." And year 2, we actually had so many women email us and say, "I'm debating between your conference and another one, but I'm only going if I can bring my husband. Like, he's begging to come with me. Is he allowed?" So, of course, we made that option available, and I think we had like 10 to 15% male attendees this year. But the difference is I think they're coming on our terms, right? So we don't want anybody there just like the thing we always say is it's not like a dick measuring contest of like, I've got 100 doors. How many do you have? The conversations at our conference are more focused on like "Hey, I have to fire my cleaner today, and it is the most nervous I've ever been to have a conversation. What should I say?" So as long as you're coming on those terms and, just very willing to learn and share advice, like, we would love to have you.
I saw, and I see it in my head now that we're talking about it. And it's in the desert, it's in a warm weather place. It's in Scottsdale, and I just see Blue with his like skinny like cut skinny jeans on and his like cowboy hat wearing pink. Was
Yeah, it
that
was
am I
perfect.
wrong? Am I wrong with that's what
No,
he was wearing? I see it in
you're
my
com
head.
yeah, I think that that's a very accurate depiction of what happened, and yeah, Patrick, he owned it, like, the guys who get it, and they are totally welcome. Jeremy, you can come next year if you'd
I
like.
was like, this looks like fun. Yeah, I need my spouse to because it's yeah, she has to be the one who brings me to come. I guess, or maybe if you give me an invite, I guess maybe that's different.
You're invited.
Uh, let's go. All right, beautiful. Yeah, no. So, and I guess what are the benefits of hosting these events, kind of really being the integrator or integral, glue of this community that you've created?
Ooh, are you asking, like, from a personal like, for me
Yeah,
personally, what
well,
have been the benefits of the
so we
event?
talked. You made $3,000, like, and you probably spent 3,000 hours to make $3,000. Maybe $1 an hour. Maybe next year, probably was better the next year, and in the I'm sure it'll be better and better moving forward. But like, yeah, what are the other? Are there other benefits uh beyond potential upside profitability upside?
Absolutely, and that's one thing I think after year 1, Tatiana and I were, like, both pretty depressed, I would say, like, when all was said and done and we made $3,000 for 3,000 hours of work, yeah, there was definitely moments where we're like, "We're never doing this again. What the heck? That was such a waste," but the doors that it opened for us after and just so many opportunities, I think the credibility that we got in the industry and, like, the name recognition behind it, I've cultivated so many relationships because of that, like, it's so cool to say that all these sponsors and amazing brands we had supporting us, I'm, like, friends with the CEOs of these companies now, and now, like, with my coaching program and my students, it's like, if they have a question about, I don't know, one of these tools or softwares, I'm like, "Oh, you need help from AirDNA? I can call their CEO and, like, have him come talk to you guys." Like, it's really cool to have those relationships. So that's, like, definitely a huge perk of it, but I think just the most fulfilling part is seeing the, like, attendees and what's come out of them, like, hearing stories of, I came year 1 and now I met my partner and now we're going in on a glamp site together. That's so cool to it's just very rewarding to see all of the fruits come out of that.
Absolutely, yeah, and I really just had my first experience with that this past weekend, and yeah, I mean, I was super stressed. Like, I mean, it was so logistically, it couldn't have been freaking easier. I literally did it in my office, and our event
It's
was
a
like
lot of pressure.
on my
Yeah.
rooftop, but people were like flying in, and also
Yes, yes.
this past week, like all the flights were effed up too. Oh yeah, and this is gonna actually lead me into the next part we're gonna talk about. But I've been so yeah, it was super stressful because I actually didn't even know if people were gonna be here, and I was like, all this effort, and like if the chairs are empty, then like I can't blame people for literally their flights getting canceled, delayed, and like an international, you know, computer outage. Like obviously, I can't.
It's funny you say that, like, it was stressful for you seeing flights get canceled, which it is, for sure. But I remember actually year 1, the most stressful moment for me was people started tagging us, like, selfies on the plane or, like, their view, like, over Scottsdale being like, "Arriving in town for a level up your" like, tagging us, and I was like, "Oh, fuck," like, they're here, like, that was so scary to me that, like, people made their flights. I was like, "Oh, shit," like, they're actually coming, like, there's no backing out now. So, it's a lot of pressure. Like knowing people took that time, paid babysitters, coordinated like whatever they had to, got time off of work to come and spend a weekend at your event. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And like one of the speakers we had, Frederico Zimmerman, who I believe
Mhm.
you know pretty
Yeah, I
well.
love him.
He
Mhm.
he was flying in from Spain, which I didn't even know, like, because he lives in upstate New York. So I was like, oh, Frederico, come drive down. Like, he's a beast. Like, so operationally, so savvy,
Yeah.
such a smart guy. But then he told me, like, texted me. Actually, how I found out about this outage was him saying, like, sending me a WhatsApp at like 4 a.m. Like, hey man, like my flight's been delayed, canceled. Like Microsoft Excel is down, to which I had barely just woken up. Like I woke up at 5 or 6 or something. I was like, wait, what? Microsoft Excel is down? What? How does that affect your flight? Like I just totally did not get it at all. Then learned about that whole thing, that whole conspiracy. I'm gonna seed what we're gonna talk about in a second here. But also I was like, damn, like speaker is also coming like a long ways. Like John Bianchi came down from Canada, like Patrick came from California, So it's like both sides, It's like you have the speakers, you want them to speak to people too. And then, there you have the people who are coming and they want to make sure the speakers are there as well. So I was like, well, if Frederico doesn't make it, like someone might be annoyed because he's coming from Spain. But what I realized is like, just if you put the right people in the right room together, it's gonna be freaking awesome. That is kind of what I figured. Like from the second you had like 4 people in the room together who had that shared interest, shared experience, and a lot of times we're kind of siloed. Like this is a specific world. I go out in New York. I can't. I'm not. I don't talk to people about short term rentals. If they ask me what I do, whatever, I'll say real estate software, whatever. I keep it high level, but you don't like, it's just like you don't get into the nitty gritty, but when you have the right people in the right room together who have that like same passion and flair, like it feels really, really good. And I'm like, I don't even, if 5 people were here, if 5 people made it with that same shared like energy, it would have been epic. So that was kind of a realization for me. Like, and that was the first day. So that was like Thursday or Friday, like 5 people were there. And then Saturday was the full day. 5 people, just people came in early and like I did podcasts with them. But that was really reassuring when I was like, oh, even with 5 people in this room together, this is awesome. Like I want everyone to make it. And people, I'm sure people came because they saw other people were coming, the little intricacies, but getting the people, there's a huge value of getting the right people in the right room together. So doing that at a massive scale is impressive. But yeah, Natalie, Patrick was telling me about, some of your other interests and intrigues. And I think what's cool about short-term rentals, I don't know if you would agree with me or not, but it's a business that you can scale, and then you can frankly automate. That's the whole thing. That's why people get into it. And it seems like you've really optimized for that. And once you have that, you can pursue other interests, other passions. You can give time and energy to other people. For me, that may be starting a software company, might be, helping my, fiance with what she's doing for a living. It might be, helping friends and do their businesses. Like I like businesses. I don't know, frankly. But for you like, seems like you got a special interest that you want to devote some more time into.
I
Uh,
know. It's so funny Patrick told you this. So, yeah, I'm in the works of starting a second podcast, nothing to do with short-term rentals or real estate at all, purely just a passion project, but, I was workshopping this idea with Patrick on the last night of Nation before I left San Diego, and Patrick is just one of the nicest guys ever to have in your corner and such a hype man, and as I was describing the concept of this show, he was like, "Yes, you need to do this, and you need to have merch, and you're gonna get this, and get this person as a guest," like, just the biggest hype man ever. And then Jeremy, when we started recording, you're like, "So Patrick tells me you're starting a new podcast." So he's already out there seeding for me, which I really appreciate. But
well, that's what
yes,
I'm doing today too. Let's keep it going.
I don't have a name for it yet, but the concept is gonna be that I want to interview conspiracy theorists. This is like in my free time. You guys, I just love to read about, was the moon landing faked, JFK assassination, Bermuda Triangle, Area 51, like all of it. I just consume that stuff so with like so much vigor. I don't know. And I don't know, like should we like really get into this?
Well, what
I
happened
just
last
really
week? What is this whole
oh,
couple thing? Well, there's 2 things that happened. We'll
a
start
lot
with
of
the
things have happened.
we'll start with the more friendly one, maybe being the whole, in power or internet outage. What do you any
Yeah,
thoughts on that one, or
we had
that
a
one's not as
power internet
spicy?
outage. We had Biden drop out, and we had near
Yeah,
assassination
these 2 are
attempt.
the
I mean,
juicier ones. Those are we're starting small, all right?
we're starting small. Okay, to be honest, the power outage I haven't spent 1 minute looking into. The other 2 have just consumed me way more intently. So,
Sure.
yeah,
So
I'm
what
I'm not
happened
the
there?
person that
Let's go. Just tell me. It's okay. This is a safe zone. I wanna hear it. I wanna hear it. Give me the scoop.
Okay, safe zone, you guys. I don't wanna, like, call anyone out, but if anybody thinks that Trump staged the assassination attempt, like, I have beachfront property in Arizona to sell you. Why would he wanna be shot within an inch of his head? It grazed the top of his ear. Okay, explain that one to me. I'm a conspiracy theorist, okay? I am. That one you're not gonna get me
Yeah,
on board
especially
for.
with the shooter who didn't make their JV shooting team at their high school.
Yes, he's gonna trust he wants to win so badly. Like, don't get me wrong, Trump came out looking like a badass from this. That photo, iconic. But you think he's gonna trust his life in the hands of a 20-year-old who couldn't get on his JV shooting? Like, give me a break with that one, okay? But absolutely, the Secret Service, CIA, FBI, one of these three-letter agencies knew something. Absolutely. Like, why did nobody get him down from the roof? I mean, he was up there, he was spotted 26 minutes before a bullet ever went. He came and he put the ladder up against the building the day before. And then that morning when they're canvassing before the rally, nobody came and took the ladder down. What? It makes no sense. He was up there for a full 2 minutes. People were pointing at him, telling the cops, "Why is this guy up here?" And nobody did anything?
Yeah, the only caveat I could possibly give, and obviously everything, it's yeah, we're finding out more and more. And yeah, you could say gross. This is like insanely gross negligence on the behalf of like our security services. And to me, it's like, okay, well, if it was extremely gross negligence, then who's getting fired? You know, who effed up? You know, like but yeah, and the only thing you could possibly say is like somehow they thought because apparently, I think I heard I'm not as into conspiracy theories, but I'm into like just trying to like, I like to like understand things or see what's going on. But I was like, apparently, obviously that was the one spot that someone really could have like, the only elevation target within, a couple hundred yards. Like it's the one spot. And apparently that building itself was like a police like hub or something. Like it was a base, so to speak. I don't know what they call it in this industry. But then maybe they thought, okay, if that's like our hub, the person on the roof must be like police, Like I could get someone thinking like, okay, the guy there with a sniper like has to be on our side. Like that is the only way I could possibly wrap my head around the fact that they saw this person was that they just assumed, yeah, of course there's a sniper. That's one of our spots. We're supposed to have like a team there.
I do buy that, and I don't blame the local police at all. I think it was the head of the Secret Service, Kim Cheadle, okay, who her previous position was, like, head at PepsiCo. What gave her the credentials to have this job? But her specifically, she said what? That they didn't put anyone on because it was a sloped roof, and it
Yeah,
was
I haven't heard her say that, but I've heard someone say that she said that. I'm like,
yeah, but the other roof that the counter snipers were on was more sloped than that one. Make it make sense.
yeah, I mean, it's like if you're gonna come up with an excuse, like at least make it a good excuse. Like I could get, I mean, I guess the Secret Service only has so many personnel, and they have to get local police to come out and help.
Yeah.
I get that. I get that. That's totally fine. Logistically, sure, it's a big operation. I get that maybe they somehow like aren't in great communication, and they think the other one's doing something they're not doing. But yeah, that excuse, like
No.
what?
I and I wanna make it very clear, I don't blame local police at all, and I don't blame any of the actual Secret Service agents that, like, ran to cover Trump. I don't blame any of them. Like, that's too many people to be in on a conspiracy. What I think more likely is that there was just someone okay, this is where I keep going to. How did this little 20-year-old punk, how did he know that this was, like, the opportunity to pull this off? There's rallies all over, and if you look at the drone footage of where that rally was, there was 2 buildings with roof access. One had counter snipers on it and one didn't, and that's the one that this shooter was on. How, as a 20-year-old, do you even figure out where all the rallies are, which one is gonna have an opportunity like that, which one is gonna just not have Secret Service scope at that location. My gut tells me that somebody way up at the top, I don't know who, somebody I don't think that they, like, gave him the gun and, like, told him to go here. But I think that maybe they saw that this kid was on certain chat rooms or something, researching, like, how to kill Trump. Apparently, they said that he had been playing, like, a first person shooter game and simulated killing Trump in that game. And I guess that one time somebody commented something that said, like, "Oh, awesome shot," and he replied, "Wait till I do it for real."
Oh my
So, like,
goodness.
something could have happened where, like, the intelligence agencies were tracking his movements, and somebody saw, "Oh, this kid, like, he maybe lives near Butler, Pennsylvania." I actually don't know where he's from,
We
but
can
there's
drop
a
him
way
some,
to.
here's like a blueprint for if you're gonna do it, this
Yes.
is how you do it.
Yes, right, like, I mean, people get catfished all the time. All the time we have, police officers and stuff pose or go undercover. Like, it'd be very easy to have one person high up in the security detail who had access to check this guy, what he was doing, surveil this, and see the opportunity and, like, drop little nuggets like, "Oh, I heard he's gonna be in Butler," and just pose as some regular gamer on this platform. So I don't think that they, like, gave him the gun or anything or told him where to go, but I think that there were steps not followed to let it happen.
Yeah, and apparently, well, because I think obviously when something like this happens initially, everybody's head goes out to like, all right, it must have been someone who just like didn't like Trump, and it's probably political. Probably doesn't like his stances on certain things, or maybe he's a devout follower of the opposite ideology, and he's felt encouraged by the rhetoric of the opposite ideology to do something extreme and drastic. And I think that everyone's kind of head went to that, and I think that's kind of fair. But then I feel like what's came out, which honestly, who knows what comes out? Like, this is an insane situation, but from what it appears is that he actually had information on like both of them. Like he was looking up Biden's whereabouts and travel, and he was like trying to clue in on like Trump's whereabout and travel. So if that's the case, and you have someone who's like feeding information along the way, which I think, yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me how you could really pull this off as a 20-year-old. Yeah, the one spot, maybe it's giving him too much credit or not enough credit. I don't know. But if that was the aim was to just do some crazy shit and just essentially make an order, right? Like that's what would have happened. Like I was literally thinking the next day, I'm like, damn, what would have happened if he was successful? Like what would today be like? Like I'm here in New York City. Like, am I sitting here like on my computer? Like, or is the power on? Like is the power working? Like, does the water work? Like would people have like just moved on with their lives and like lived another day, or would have, I don't know. Like, well, I just have
I
no
know.
idea. So like, or would a pandemonium happen? And like, was there a concerted effort just to make like crazy pandemonium happen? Which I think is possible. I mean, I don't know. You see with Cloudflare, the DNS goes down, and Microsoft Azure goes off, and now flights aren't happening, and people can't get through customs. Like, it doesn't take a lot to like really make the world like go crazy, or maybe not function.
It's so scary to think. I think people think, like, World War III is gonna be triggered by a nuke or something, but literally just shutting off the grid. Like, turn off disconnect all power in LA and New York City for 6 hours. And, like, the chaos that would ensue, the looting that would start, the violence that would start, like, that alone would break out a civil war. And then it would just spread to, like, the rural areas of the country. I don't know. Things are very, very intermingled and, like, entangled right now, and if you cut off, like, one part of the machine, I don't know what happens.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, and it's crazy to think about, and I think you kinda start going through a wormhole. I admittedly did that myself, and especially was refreshing my Twitter every hour, every 2 hours, like, trying to just see what new
Oh, mine
information.
was every 5 minutes, so props to you.
Yeah, but also you have to, like, also look and be like, "Alright, there's, like, the total bogus that's put out there, and there's actually things that are, like, real," and that's, I think, one of the big issues we face as a society is, like, certain things, like, find their way to the top, and those things that, like, find their way to the top are generally absurd and completely, like, just made up, whereas, the things that find their way to the top that are true might take a little bit longer. But, yeah, I just remember just sitting there like, "What if?" But yeah, I guess a lot of people, but part of me was thinking, I think a lot of people just go on with their lives. Like I was at Dumbo House, on the rooftop with the pool. I wasn't in my office at the time. I was hanging out. I was actually just asking I met with my friend to ask him if he wanted to be a groomsman for my wedding. So it was like supposed to be like a meaningful day. And I was sitting there and like beautiful fucking sunset, like insanely beautiful sunset. It happened at like 6 and the sunset was a little bit thereafter. And we were sitting there talking about it, like me, my fiance, my friend, and the people next to us weren't. They weren't talking about it like at all. Like I didn't hear anything out of them. So I'm like, are people, do they just like, are we, does it not even like, do most people not even care? I don't know.
I mean, what's nuts, like, I feel like that day, for me at least, it was one of those, like, 9/11 days, like, you're gonna remember where you were when you heard the news,
I was looking at the Freedom
and
Tower. I was literally looking at
there,
a view
like,
of
you
the Freedom Tower.
remember.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, okay, so yeah, and
Not on nine
it
eleven.
was
On that day. I just happened to be.
no, I
Yeah.
know, that's what a coincidence though. But yeah, that's, like, totally what I thought of is like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna remember, like, in 30 years, like, telling, my kids this, like, moment in history that, like, I remember where I was and my emotions about it and reaction and everything." And what's nuts though to think about is, like, 9/11 right now, you can get your news from so many different places. I feel like it's part of why we're so, like, fragmented and divided, I think. Whereas 9/11, everybody who just had the morning news on the morning it happened, immediately, whatever channel you were watching, it cut to that. Like, there was no way to not know about it. And here, I feel like for some people, the assassination attempt was on a Saturday. There are probably so many people who disconnected over the weekend and got into work on Monday, and people were like, "Oh, so what do you think what happened?" And they're like, "What happened?" Like, they didn't know for 2 full days. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I
I don't
remember
know.
asking a couple people around me, like, "Yeah, what do you think would happen?" And, like, they're like, "I don't know, we're in New York." Like, some people would, like, come into, like, New York and, like, Civil War, and I'm like, "Civil War who? Civil War what?" Like, how do you do a civil war? Like, where do you go for it? You know? Like, what there's no, like there's America, like,
Well,
sure,
that
like, if you look online, like, there's 2 opposite teams, but it's not like, what was it, 1861, you know? It wasn't the whole South versus
right.
North situation. Like
I've been thinking about that too. Yeah, like there you had very clear lines, north versus south, right? And now everyone's integrated. Like the people on opposite sides of my neighbors on opposite sides of me have a different political affiliation than I do, and I'm friendly with them, but like if there was a civil war on, like, political lines, like, what would happen? Would they turn on me? I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't
It's
think that.
weird,
I'll
like,
give
being that
people more credit.
integrated, with, like, the opposing team, and, like, we're friends. I have family members that are on a different side. Are we supposed to, like, go attack each other? Like, I don't know what that's even gonna look like. I don't know.
And I think at its core is no. Like, I don't think Americans are doing that. I mean, I think they did have a pretty good response after saying, "We don't do this. Like, this is not something we do in America." You could definitely argue, yeah, why a 20-year-old. I'm not trying to get into politicalness or, that's not what this podcast is about. But like, yeah, if you want to make the argument that a 20-year-old should not easily get access to an AR-15, this is definitely a case in point for that argument. But I would say, yeah, generally, most people do not want to go around shooting each other. That's in this country. Like, it's gonna, it doesn't matter what happens. Like, people don't really want to do that. Obviously, yeah, there's inner cities and stuff like that going on. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to get too deep there. But yeah, so this conversation as a whole is brought to you by short-term rentals, and the fact that on a Monday at 3:35 p.m. we can kind of shoot the shit on this conversation topic, and our boss isn't like, Natalie, get back to work, stop talking about these
Go produce more
conspiracy.
widgets, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of, is that what you did? Did you used to produce widgets?
No.
Oh, because we actually are
I
building a.
are you? Are you producing widgets?
Well, B&B Calc is making a widget, like a software widget that you can put in the website and get someone's name, email, and address. I forgot to talk about that on your podcast. Crap. I don't know, put it in the show notes or something. But like essentially a lead gen magnet. If you're a property manager, you want, someone goes to your website, they're curious about how much their property can make, rather than like them filling out the form and you sending back an email or calling them at some point, you get like automatic response with like some, limited data, but some data on seasonality and like how much you could expect your property to make. Sorry, I don't know if that's even the widget reference you were talking about at all.
Oh,
Uh,
no, I just no, what you were saying, right? Like, we don't have a boss breathing down our neck to just, like, go produce something. Like, it's
yeah.
very cool to have this flexibility, yeah, and be able to think about, I don't know, and research these topics, and yeah, that's what I research in my free time. If I'm not doing real estate or short-term rentals, it's all these different wormholes, and it's like once you get into one, it's like, "Wait, JFK assassination, now that spurs, like, false flag events with Cuba," and, like, now you go down that whole wormhole, you know? It just never ends.
Yeah. And the
Um,
crazy things
and
is there's a lot of it, like there's a truth to so much of it. So it's like you do uncover things. And then once you've uncovered things, it's like, crap, can I look at things the same way now?
I know, and that is what I will say, for me, the biggest takeaway from this assassination attempt is whatever side you're on, I have yet to meet a person who thinks that a 20-year-old shooter just showed up and took a shot. I don't know anybody who believes that, right? People are either saying that Trump's campaign staged it, which again, I think that's like moronic, but okay, some people are saying that. And then there's people saying that the CIA was in on it, Secret Service was in on it, that this kid, he was in like a BlackRock commercial, so maybe he
Oh
had
yeah, that
ties
was
to
so
some.
funny.
Right, like but I don't know anybody like, the big conclusion for me from this whole thing was that everybody now is questioning authority. Like, these agencies, we just don't have trust in them at all anymore, whichever side you're on, you don't trust the information coming to you. That's really like so to get back to I'm starting another podcast, which has nothing to do with short-term rentals. This is just purely for fun. But what I wanna do is have on a conspiracy theorist every week on a different topic. And so I would love to interview like a flat earther. I am not a flat earther, but I think a lot of flat earthers get really written off as being crazy. And I think that maybe there's like if they feel as jaded about that as I do about this situation, I feel bad that a lot of people haven't gotten like a fair shot to have their thoughts aired out and people just write them off as crazy. And I don't know. I would love to just sit down with somebody and be like, explain it to me. Like, tell me why you think the earth is flat. Like, how are the moon and the sun and everything gravitationally like going around each other if the earth is flat? Like, I just want to hear you out, human to human. And I think that there's a lot more we have in common with the people that we've written off as crazy than we're different. I think there's more we have in common than not. And it's just yeah, I don't know, but once your eyes are, like, open to one of these things that might not be true, I feel like you start to question everything else.
I need to put you in contact with my aunt Jody. She's
Aunt Jody, I wanna meet her.
very successful. Like, well, she's technically she's my aunt's best friend, but I've known her my whole life, so I'll just call her Aunt Jody for all sakes and purposes. But yeah, she's successful. She has an essential oils company, which is like essential oils in themselves might be a conspiracy. Like if they work, don't work, But she's written books on essential oils, like thought leader in that topic. And yeah, she has her freedom through her small business, and through that, she's conspiracy theorist through and through. Admittedly, I don't really understand her conspiracy theories. They're like so out there. They're like lizard people type stuff that
Oh,
I couldn't even tell you what they are because to
okay.
me, to
But
me at
see,
least,
that's what I would wanna know, like, I've Googled before, like, why do flat earthers believe what they believe? And you can't even find that information, and it's just I don't know, it's sad to me that these people, like, really believe in something so passionately and, like, they just can't get a fair shake for it. And I think what's interesting too, like, let's just go there because we already are.
we're here.
Vaccines, okay? Vaccines. Like, a lot of times, I feel like growing up, I always had the image in my head that anti-vaxxers were these, like, uneducated, just hick rubes who didn't believe in science or anything, and if you actually look now, people who are anti-vaxxers and aren't vaccinating their kids, it's wealthier classes, it's celebrities that aren't vaccinating their kids, and lower class people are vaccinating across the board. They have to put their kids in school. I'm not making a stance on vaccines, okay? Like, don't get me wrong. But it's so interesting that people who are like wealthier and might have more access to information are the ones that view things differently. RFK Jr., right? He's huge on the anti vax movement and he comes from so much money. Like, his family is just like legacy in American politics. He would have the resource to like research that stuff and question it, but still somehow our culture is like writing off anti-vaxxers as just like these uneducated idiots. And again, I'm not making a stance on vaccines. I just want to like have these conversations with people and I don't know. I think this is a lot of our division. I think that if people just instead of using like a pejorative like, "Oh, she's an anti-vaxxer," but if you actually ask somebody, "Why do you think that?" I think we would find a lot more common ground with people. So that's the concept of the show. If you're interested in this, there's no name yet, but it's coming out soon. This is my passion project I'm working on the side.
Yeah, so we have the No Vacancy podcast, and now we have the No Name
No name
podcast.
podcast.
Wink, wink,
Yeah.
nudge, nudge. No Name Podcast. Do you like that? Do you like that? Are we
That's
going with that
catchy.
name? The No Name
That's kinda
Podcast.
catchy.
I
I
think
could be
that's
into
cool.
that.
I think that was a good idea. I thought of that. I think it's good. It's all right. You
You'll
can
get royalties if we
all
land on
right.
that name.
Good. Yeah, beautiful. All right. Well, and yeah, just my takeaway of this is that everyone has their hierarchy of needs. And, I think the first thing people are looking for is like food, shelter, and safety. That's the first thing. They get that. Then what are they looking for? And then maybe, that you have a job, but you actually want one that like you're passionate about. Like that's maybe the next level of, the self-actualization. All right, you've got a job you're passionate about. Well, now you actually want a way to free up your time to like do other things. That's where, if that's where you are, that's where I think we're both believers that like short-term rentals and whatnot is a great, great thing for that. All right, now you've gotten that. What do you want to do at that time? And it's totally okay to do whatever the hell you want to do. If you want to talk conspiracy theories, that's fucking awesome. And I want to give you major kudos for realizing that's something you care about. And I'm excited. I know Patrick's a big accountability source for you here, but maybe I can be an accountability partner and say, send it. I'm sure you're going to make something great of that passion. I'm a firm believer in you. And I think I alluded to this on your podcast, but when you're like with someone or like talking to them or a part of their journey, like at the beginning of it, and you're like a supporter and like an encourager at the get-go, it's really, really meaningful once it actually becomes something along the line. So maybe we're doing that. Maybe that's happening right now.
I already like the name idea. I already like the name idea. That's a good one. And that ties in no name. It's like you don't wanna, like, label people or give them names or, like, pejoratives, right? Kinda works both ways. I'm
Exactly.
liking
It's
it.
it's not taking a side, it's not taking an opinion, it's not anything. It's just a place to have conversations and hear things from people. And if someone has like I'll give Jody credit, like she has thought so much about all this stuff. Like she honestly, if you could listen to her, like she probably has very compelling arguments. Like if I'm going to be
That's
completely
what I
honest.
Yes, that's what I wanna hear, and it's so sad to me how we just, like, write off an entire population as crazy, and it's something that people are so passionate about. You could have I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, there's just the amount of time that people research and stuff for something that they care about just to be told like, "Oh, she's a loony, she's a lunatic." Like, it's so unfair, and I think if you just heard people out and brought them to the table, you could convince them or be convinced the other way. Yeah, I think it's unfair that a lot of people are, like, getting the short end of the stick or just being labeled when they're just passionate and wanna learn and question.
Well, I'm excited for you to give a voice from these marginalized individuals. So yeah,
Conspiracy theorists. The
exactly.
thing is, I'm not even I wouldn't even say, like, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I love to, like, research, and I do go into things with questions, but I do believe the moon landing happened. Maybe after I interview a moon landing truther, I'll change my mind, I don't know. I do believe the Earth is
You can
round,
be
okay?
convinced. You can be
Yeah,
convinced. All right.
but I'm open-minded, I could be convinced, and I'll end on this point because this is a real estate podcast. As I do research conspiracy theories and I love this kind of stuff, I will say, like, real estate brings me so much joy. I think that we are living in a time that the world you don't know what's real. It is hard to question, like, people investing in crypto, it's like, what even is this? It's kind of this, like, ethereal thing, like, can we really rely on this? Even the stock market, like it's got a good history, but really like you're putting your money in something and just hoping that it performs the way it has in the past. And real estate is something to me that like as I question the world and look at these different topics, it feels just so tangible to like own and have something and know that if shit hits the fan and the grid goes down, we have other properties we can go to. We have resources, we have things that we could sell if we needed to. We have places that we could put up our friends and family. Like I guess that'll be the way I tie it in so that the people still listening aren't pissed that we didn't stick to real estate on this podcast.
Well, my takeaway is maybe I need to get some shelter Airbnbs. I will pay a premium if you have a cellar in there.
Anyone have a bunker? Yeah.
Yeah, bunker. Yeah, sure, bunker. That's the word. Beautiful. So yeah, folk who want to stay in tune with your journey, short-term rental, other interests, how can they find you?
Find me on Instagram at Natalie Palmer. Whenever this new podcast comes out, that's where I will announce it. And my current podcast, No Vacancy, the podcast, which does not get this off the rails, you can also find that through my Instagram. And if you'd like to attend Level Up Your Listing Summit in March in Scottsdale, you can also find all of that through my Instagram. Everything is linked through there, Natalie Palmer.
Beautiful. Well, thank you guys for joining me as normal today. I think this was maybe a more interesting or a unique conversation. But as always, stay tuned to the next episode of the Short Term Rental Pros podcast.